Okay, let's talk about one of the most powerful and, honestly, kind of weird ideas in all of economics: comparative advantage. It's the secret sauce that explains why working together and trading can make everyone better off, even when it looks like one person or one country is just better at everything. So, how on earth does that work? Let's dive in.
All right, to really wrap our heads around this, we're going to start with a puzzle. It's a simple question that kind of messes with our basic ideas about what it means to be efficient.
So just picture this. You've got the greatest chef on the planet, a culinary genius. But here's the twist. They are also incredibly fast at washing dishes. Way faster and better than anyone they could hire. So the question is simple. Should they do their own dishes? I mean, your gut instinct probably screams, yes, of course. Why would you pay someone to do a job you can do better yourself? But as you might guess, economics has a totally different answer. And this right here gets to the heart of it all. Our intuitive, everyday approach is to focus on who has the best absolute skill. If the chef is the best at cooking and cleaning, well, they should do both. But the economic approach asks a much smarter question. What is the best use of the chef's time? It's a huge shift from thinking about raw talent to thinking about relative efficiency.
See, to solve this puzzle, we have to understand what the chef's time really costs. And in economics, cost isn't just about dollars and cents. It's about what you give up. It's about the opportunities you lose.
Okay, first up is the easy one, the idea we all just get. It's called absolute advantage. It just means you're flat out better at something. You can make more of it or do it faster with the same resources. Our chef, they have an absolute advantage in both cooking delicious meals and washing dishes. Simple as that.
But this is the game changer: comparative advantage. This isn't about being the best overall. It's about being able to do something at a lower opportunity cost. It basically asks, who has to give up the least to get this specific job done? So let's really lock this idea in, because it's everything. Opportunity cost. Every minute our superstar chef spends scrubbing a pan, what are they not doing? They're not creating a 5-star, high-priced meal. That meal they didn't cook, that's the opportunity cost of washing dishes, and it is incredibly high. Understanding this concept is the key that unlocks this whole puzzle. Let's make this crystal clear with another little story. We're going to leave the kitchen for a minute and meet a writer and a designer. Okay, let's look at their productivity. In a single hour, the writer can crank out 4 articles, or they could produce 2 designs. The designer, in that same hour, can do 1 article or 1 design. You can see it right away, can't you? The writer has the absolute advantage in both jobs. They're just faster at everything. So, here we are again. Back at the same puzzle. The writer is better at both writing and designing. So should they just do it all themselves, or is there a smarter way for them to team up and actually get more done together? And boom, this is the aha moment. Let's look at the opportunity costs. To write 1 article, the writer has to give up making half a design. But for the designer to write 1 article, they give up an entire design. So the writer's cost of writing is lower. They have the comparative advantage in writing. Now let's flip it. To make 1 design, the writer gives up writing 2 articles, but the designer, they only give up 1 article. So the designer has the lower opportunity cost for designing. It's wild, right? Even though they're slower, they're the more efficient choice for design work. So the path forward is suddenly obvious. They each need to specialize in the task where they have the lower opportunity cost. The writer should just write. The designer should just design. Then they trade their work. And by doing this, they both end up with a better deal than if they had tried to do everything themselves. And here's the proof in hard numbers. Let's say they both work for 2 hours. If they split their time, they'd end up with 5 articles and 3 designs total. That's 8 items. But if they specialize for those same 2 hours, the writer makes 8 articles, the designer makes 2 designs. That's 10 items total. By working together smartly, they've boosted their combined output by 25%. They've literally created more value out of thin air. It's not magic. It's the power of comparative advantage. Okay, so this totally works for 2 people. But what happens when we scale this idea up? I mean, way up, to the size of the entire global economy. Well, it's the exact same logic. Just like people, different countries have different strengths. Their unique mix of stuff, like their natural resources, their climate, the skills of their workforce, their level of technology, all of this gives each country a different set of opportunity costs. You know, a country with huge open plains has a really low opportunity cost for growing grain. Another country with tons of brilliant engineers might have a low opportunity cost for designing microchips. I mean, think about the smartphone that's probably in your pocket right now.
That thing is the perfect example of this in action. The design probably happened in the US, the advanced chips came from Taiwan, the screen from South Korea, and it was all put together in China. No single country tried to do everything, because it's way, way more efficient for each one to specialize and then trade. And the result for us? A much better, much cheaper phone than any one country could have ever built on its own.
So let's bring this all home and bust a couple of big myths that you always hear when people talk about global trade. You've heard this one a million times, right? The idea that a country is always strongest if it just makes everything it needs for itself. Total self-sufficiency. But as we've just seen, that's just plain wrong. It completely ignores the incredible power of comparative advantage. By specializing in trading, countries allow their people to consume a variety and quantity of goods that would be absolutely impossible to produce on their own. It shatters the limits of self-sufficiency. Okay, here's another big one. The idea that free trade is some kind of a zero-sum game where the powerful, efficient countries just end up exploiting the weaker ones. And again, this completely misses the point. Comparative advantage was never about who is the strongest or the most dominant. It's about relative efficiency. A country that's less productive at everything can still come out way ahead by specializing in whatever it does least badly, the thing it gives up the least to produce, and then trading. It's designed to be a win-win.
And that really is the ultimate takeaway here. The principle of comparative advantage shows us that economics isn't just about ruthless competition. Deep down, it reveals a profound, powerful logic for cooperation. It helps us see the world not as a collection of rivals, but as a network of potential partners, all capable of working together to create more for everyone.